like it's working for special interests.
Political campaigning is becoming a science.
He's almost off the charts.
Is it all about making the best argument?
All you need to do is tell people the facts and the figures, and then they'll reason to the right conclusion, right? Wrong.
Or is America vulnerable to modern forms of propaganda?
What Support the Troops does is aligns a network about supporting our men and women in uniform, on the one hand,
You're killing the troops!
and deploying them to Iraq and keeping them in Iraq. Those things have no logical relation to each other whatsoever, but it has caught the Democrats over and over and over.
Change the way you think about politics when three masters of the art of political communication from both the left and the right reveal their secrets about how politicians manipulate the public. In There You Go Again, Orwell Comes to America, The Science of Manipulation. A conference at the New York Public Library held on November 7th, 2007.
We're here to diagnose symptoms of propaganda, disinformation, manipulative rhetoric on the American political landscape, and we're doing this as part of a series of events, of which this is just one. But this is really, this panel this afternoon is where the rubber really hits the road, because we looked back to the past this morning, but now we're here in the now talking about politics and propaganda in the United States at this time. In this next panel, what we're beginning to focus on, I'd like to call this the PhD face-off, because we have PhDs galore in this panel. And these are our scientists who are going to, shall we say, look under the hood of political communication. They will tell us a little bit about what is it that science, both social science, cognitive science, linguistics, are able to say to us today about how political messages are framed and then decoded by audiences, how this is integrated into our political discourse today in ways that are stunningly complex, and I appreciate their efforts in trying to boil it all down for us today. The next panel is going to focus on the media, both its failings, but hopefully also its promise in restoring honesty and decency and truth to America's public debates. Now, I want to say that this is a first salvo, this event, but there's another component of what we're doing here today, which is we're launching a book, an anthology of essays that features several of the speakers, but also additional ones. It's titled What Orwell Didn't Know, Propaganda in the New Face of American Politics. I'm quite proud of it, and I encourage you please to buy it. The moderator of this next panel is Nicholas Lemon, or Nick Lemon, as we call him. He is the Dean of the Columbia Journalism School and an esteemed journalist, author of a number of books, several of which are available, signed here today, and of course a regular contributor to the New Yorker magazine. So I'd now like to invite him and his panel up to the stage, and Nick, it's all yours. Thank you very much. Enjoy.
Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'll just introduce very briefly. This, in a certain way, is the PhD panel, and in a certain way, it's the fun panel, because we have got a lot of audio-visual material that you're going to see and hear starting very soon. By way of introduction, I, as a journalist, have been very interested in this subject of political language for quite some time. I've kind of moved in and out of covering politics per se. But if there's a sort of light bulb moment, in 1980, everyone will have forgotten, and as they should, there was a brief moment in the spring of 1980 when Gerald Ford was going to come out of retirement and run for president. So he holed up in a townhouse on Lafayette Square in Washington. I was a reporter for the Washington Post, and I was sent to do a stakeout, outside this townhouse. And, people kept coming and going all day. So I had this picture in my mind of he'd be there, and first the union leaders would come, and then the governors of states would come, and then the heads of congressional committees would come, and then the big city bosses would come. But no, they didn't come. Instead, it was a procession of the pollsters came, and then the advertising people came, and then the marketing specialists came. And I really thought politics has changed in some way. Although I hope we'll return to this question of how much has it changed and try to be precise about it. In 2000, I came back into covering politics for The New Yorker and kind of re-entered this subject, and some of my tutors are here on this panel. I wrote a story. I interviewed Deborah Tannen, George Lakoff, and Frank Luntz, not Drew, that year, and wrote a piece in The New Yorker called The Word Lab, primarily about Frank, although secondarily about George. We sort of made a deal in that piece where, for what I believed at the time and still believe was much less than your usual fee, we had practically nothing. We hired Frank, and he said, if you pay me a fee for a day, I will take you into one of my focus groups, and I'll show you how I can get a group of people who come in being for inheritance taxation, leave 2 hours later being against inheritance taxation, simply by changing the language we use to describe it. And he did, and that became the basis of this piece. Well, first I'll introduce the panelists, then I'll play a little audio clip. But I got very fascinated at that time, and I know many of you are too, with how words are used, especially through media of mass communications, in politics, and how effective they are, what the techniques are, what's kind of really going on under the surface of what we see when we see candidates speaking and advertising, and how effective is all this stuff. I want to spend time later on trying to be very precise about when did this all start, what's new, what's not new, is there a kind of new technology that's making politicians more effective at the use of language here, what's okay and what's not okay in a moral sense, if that's even applicable. In service of getting all those questions answered, I would just say now to the panelists, 10 to 12 minute opening presentations are important because the time will fly by. I will start sort of shifting in my chair and then harumphing and being even more interventionist as we get from 10 minutes to 11 minutes over into 12 minutes. Okay, so let me introduce in this order, just by reading from the program, because I understand you don't all have programs. George Lakoff, this gentleman, is Senior Fellow and co-founder of the Rockridge Institute and the Goldman Distinguished Professor of Cognitive Science and Linguistics at the University of California, Berkeley, where he studies the framing of issues in politics. He's one of the world's best-known linguists and a founder of the field of cognitive science. He has published hundreds of articles in numerous books on linguistics, psychology, poetics, philosophy, and mathematics. Among his works on mind and language are Thinking Points, Whose Freedom? The Battle Over America's Most Important Idea, Don't Think of an Elephant, Moral Politics, and Metaphors We Live By. His next book, The Political Mind, is an introduction to recent scientific results about the brain and mind that have a bearing on politics. As a private citizen, he helps progressive citizens groups, activists, and policymakers think through their values and principles, formulate policies, and frame issues to express their deepest beliefs more effectively. Frank Luntz, in the middle, has been called the hottest pollster in America by the Boston Globe and was named one of 4 top research minds by Business Week. He was the winner of the coveted Washington Post Crystal Ball Award for being the most accurate pundit in 1992. Luntz has written, supervised, and conducted more than 1,500 surveys, focus groups, and dial sessions in more than 24 countries and 4 continents over the past decade, and is the pioneer of the instant response focus group technique. He consults Fortune 100 companies, from General Motors to Federal Express, Disney to American Express, AT&T to Pfizer, Kroger supermarkets to McDonald's, and the entire soft drink and motion picture industries, as well as the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, National Association of Manufacturers, and the Business Roundtable on communications and language. He also served as a consultant to the award-winning NBC hit show The West Wing. He's the Somebody made me say that. He is the author of Words That Work. It's not what you say, it's what people hear. On this side, Drew Weston is a clinical personality and political psychologist and a professor in the departments of psychology, psychiatry, and behavioral sciences at Emory University. As the founder of Western Strategies, a consulting firm, he advises Democratic leaders and candidates. He holds a BA from Harvard College, an MA in social and political thought from the University of Sussex in England, and a PhD in clinical psychology from the University of Michigan. He has been chief psychologist at Cambridge Hospital and an associate professor at Harvard Medical School. He's a blogger for the Huffington Post and a commentator on NPR's All Things Considered.